When you hear the Silk Road, what's the first thing that pops into your head? Silk, right? And yeah, you're not wrong. But honestly, that famous name, it only tells a tiny part of a way bigger, way more complex, and frankly, a much more fascinating story. Because what really traveled along these ancient routes, well, it changed the world forever.
I mean, for centuries, silk from China was the ultimate luxury good. It was so soft, so beautiful, everybody who was anybody wanted it. We're talking Roman emperors, Persian kings, you name it. And this trade was so huge, so important, that this whole network of routes connecting Asia and Europe became known as the Silk Road.
So the big question is, was it all just about fancy fabric? Was that it? No way. Not even close. The real story of the Silk Road is about everything else that managed to hitch a ride on those merchant caravans.
Okay, so let's start with things that had a bit more bang. Let's forget about fancy clothes for a minute and think about technologies that would completely reshape the entire world.
Okay, you have to hear this story. It's incredible. Around 850 AD, you've got these Chinese alchemists trying to create a potion for eternal life, right? So they're mixing stuff together, saltpeter, sulfur, and charcoal. And instead of figuring out how to live forever, boom, they create an explosion. They had accidentally invented gunpowder.
And you know what? Gunpowder did not stay in China for long. It literally journeyed west along the Silk Road. And by the 13th century, bam, it's in the Islamic world and Europe. Before you know it, cities like Florence are making cannons, and by the 1350s, this accidental Chinese discovery had completely changed the face of warfare. Forever.
And get this, gunpowder wasn't traveling alone. It was kind of part of this incredible package of Chinese inventions. Think about it: paper, printing techniques, the compass, and of course, gunpowder. All of these world-changing technologies spread from east to west along these very routes. And they ended up giving Europeans the tools that would lead to massive historical shifts, things like the Renaissance and the Age of Exploration.
But what if I told you that the most important things traded on the Silk Road couldn't be packed in a box? You couldn't even load them onto a camel. We're talking about the invisible cargo.
Because, goods and technology, they change how people live. That's big. But the exchange of ideas, of faith, of philosophy, that changes what people believe. And that would impact millions and millions of lives forever.
Just take a look at these maps right here. The Silk Road was the very network that allowed Buddhism to travel all the way from its birthplace in India, across Asia, and deep into China. And it worked the other way too. Islam spread out from the Arabian Peninsula, carried by merchants and missionaries along these exact same trade routes. These weren't just local faiths anymore. The Silk Road helped turn them into major world religions.
But here's the thing about connection. It has a dark side. When you connect the world, you don't just share the good stuff. You also share the bad. And this ancient network, it came with a truly terrible price.
This superhighway for goods and ideas, it also became a superhighway for disease. The deadliest pandemic in human history, the plague we call the Black Death, spread along these very same routes. It was carried by fleas on rats that hid in the very same merchant caravans carrying the silk and spices.
Professor Mark Welford puts it perfectly. He points out that this was probably the first time in history a disease could travel so far so fast. The connectivity of the Silk Road, it made the world vulnerable in a way it had never, ever been before.
And the result? It was catastrophic. 50 million people. That's the estimate for how many died in Europe alone in just 6 years. It's a number so huge, it's almost impossible to wrap your head around. And it's a direct consequence of the interconnected world the Silk Road created.
And disease wasn't the only tragedy on the road. People themselves were traded as property. Slave markets existed all along the Silk Road, from Europe all the way to Asia. This statue you're looking at, from 8th century China, is a quiet but really powerful reminder that the cargo on those camels wasn't always silk or spices.
So, when we put it all together, what was the Silk Road, really? It was so much more than just a road. It was the world's first great global network.
So yeah, it was a pipeline for luxury goods, absolutely. But it was also for revolutionary technology that changed everything. It was a conduit for powerful beliefs that shaped entire civilizations, but also for devastating diseases that shattered them. And, tragically, it was a marketplace for human beings.
You can think of the Silk Road as the internet of its day. It connected people and spread both brilliant innovations and incredibly dangerous threats. And that leaves us with a pretty big question for our own time, doesn't it? What are the powerful ideas and the dangerous diseases, things like misinformation, that we're trading on our global networks right now? It's definitely something to think about.